I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking through.
The ADHD advantage, why your brain might be built for business success. Hello, I'm your host, Coach Phil, and I'm excited to be here. I'm just looking at my background. It's the weirdest color I've ever seen. We are having some technical difficulties with cameras and lighting, and anyway, you can hear us. But what's most important is to find out what the heck I just talked about, the ADHD advantage. There's an advantage to that? Well, my guest is going to share some light on that. Some nice light, not like the light you're seeing here in my show, but I'm looking forward to having him on here. So if you're watching us live, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you being here. If you have a question you would like to have asked, pop it into wherever you're watching us from, and we'll do our best to answer your question, address that on the show if we can. And if not, we'll catch you on the other side when we get on this done back onto social media to see what people have said. If you're watching us as a replay, hashtag replay, let us know where you're watching us in from, what you liked about the program. If you have a question, same thing, let us know and we'll do our best to answer it and give you some sage advice or input from your interest in what we're doing. I'm excited today to be able to bring on a wonderful guest, a fellow Canadian, and like it says in the show, ADHD. He's going to tell us a little bit about that and what it's done for him and 22,000 other entrepreneurs. So he is going to be a real treat to help be on the show with us today. Ezra DeWolfe, ADHD business strategist and founder of the ADHD tools. Ezra has helped over, as I mentioned, 22,000 entrepreneurs with ADHD turn what feels like chaos into clarity. I love the name Chaos. I coached a hockey team of all girls, and our name was Chaos. It was beautiful. So chaos can be a good thing, I think, but we're going to find out today. So Ezra is building systems that scale and stick. He's proof that ADHD isn't a liability. It can be your ultimate competitive edge. Get ready to hear how executive dysfunction becomes executive dominance, and maybe, just maybe, discover the thing you thought was holding you back is the very thing that will set you free. Ezra is coming in. I can hear him walking down the hall, and he's here right now. Hello and welcome, and thank you for fitting us into your schedule today.
Hey, it's so good to be here, Phil. I like it. We got the kind of the blue and the orange. We got the superhero theme going on, this sort of color gradient. That's great.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, even with all the lights I've got in the studio, technology, as we were talking in the green room, sometimes is awesome. Other times it's not. And one of the things it does, I think, is it tests our mettle as an entrepreneur. If you want to, my experience, and I've heard from other entrepreneurs, is that if you want to know who you are and grow into your best self, it doesn't necessarily can have always happy moments. Become an entrepreneur.
No, I would agree with that statement that that business can be a great tool for personal growth, and then the key is we're always going to be facing problems. So can we go through it with as little suffering as possible is the key.
So I know a little bit more about you than maybe some of the people that are watching us now or in the future. And you discovered by self-discovery, which gives you the credibility and the expertise to be able to say what you say about ADHD could be your asset. Would you like to jump in and tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, sure. So I would describe myself as a person who has always had big ideas, always just like fascinated by things, would go deep, always had a mind for business. And I also just saw in myself that there were times that I could get so overwhelmed almost with the number of ideas. It would like hold back on my ability to follow through. And of course, if we can't follow through on things, consistency is one of those most important things in business. So what I sort of learned is that, or how I see ADHD now, is it is kind of a superpower. We might be a superhero, but very similar to Superman. All of your superpowers are completely negated in the presence of kryptonite. And so a key thing we have to do is it's not just enough to sort of, you can't actually ever take advantage of any of those things unless we also have plans and strategies in place to manage that kryptonite.
When you say that, and I think about what I just heard in my own experience, I hear with a lot of the people I work with, they suffer from shiny object syndrome. Is that a kind of maybe a hint that maybe ADHD might be a challenge for them? Or am I way off base?
Well, I think what's wonderful about having this type of brain is that we have the type of brain that sees opportunities and possibilities everywhere. And I think it's probably true that everyone to some extent has the shiny object syndrome, but it's a whole other situation if your brain is working overdrive and seeing opportunities. So is it more likely that we're susceptible to fall to it? I'm not as sure about that, but I would agree that probably if you have a brain that is constantly seeing opportunities, it takes particular strategies and discipline to be able to actually harness that, so that actually becomes something that helps you in business, as opposed to something that it could equally pull you aside and have competitors pass you.
So a couple of images that came up for me when you were describing that is either could be a leveraging asset, or it could be like a 747 big jumbo helping us guide that vessel with all of the potential we have inside the cargo bay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or am I way off base with those crazy thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's true. I'm not a person that believes, I don't actually believe a lot in sort of a pathologized view of ADHD, that, oh my God, so sad, everything is terrible. Because if that was true, I would have to wonder, why do we see so many entrepreneurs who have ADHD? I think there's actually something to it. There are some strengths. But yeah, it's just a question of making sure that we can mitigate some of those advantages to really take advantage of those strengths. A very common journey, you asked, like, how might somebody recognize? I would say a very common journey of people I work with is that they're people who are responsible people. And maybe they've gone through, like, they weren't just a person, they had these issues through life. They've always kind of been working on them. They go from planner to planner to planner. They read self-help book to self-help book to self-help book, and they're trying it out diligently. And it doesn't quite work, and they're not quite sure why. And often the reason for that, if you've actually been trying all of those things and you've been doing them diligently as prescribed and they haven't worked, it's often because what's happening is not that you were lacking necessarily self-discipline. It's because you have one of these brains that we have to put a little bit of a different operating system so that we can maximize our strengths and mitigate those weaknesses.
My imagination's running wild. I'm not an artist, but you are painting some crazy pictures. I'm seeing myself like a pit bull. I love pit bulls. It's not an aggressive pit bull, but I'm being held back by a chain because I've had all of this potential, but the chain's strong enough that it's holding me back. And another thing is a chain, no dog, no nothing. It's just a chain with a lever on it that's holding me back. And all I need to do is pull that lever off, and it opens up the chain, and ta-da! Everything is rosy. Well, maybe not rosy, but you grow into your potential with less stress, less mess. That's that's what's happening for me as I listen to you tell this stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that can be one of the differences between, like, what I would offer is that a place that a lot of entrepreneurs with ADHD find themselves in is that they see they have these strengths, they see they have these weaknesses, and the most common way they go about it to try to address their weaknesses is they try to take advice from people who don't have ADHD. They try to find hyper-productive people who are hyper-productive, sort of I call neurotypical folks who don't have ADHD. They try to follow that game plan, and it doesn't quite work out for them. But what they really need to be doing, often what makes the shift for people, is just who we're modeling. What if we actually model? I think modeling is a beautiful idea of what one person can do, another person can do. But what we actually have to find, if we're one of these creative types, is that we have to find people who have ADHD, who figured out exactly what do you do to make the most of it. You want to model those productive people. And then often what people find is that, this is what business was always supposed to feel like, when they actually are able to step into that potential and that kind of real them that's always been there, but they've never quite been able to access.
Right. Would it be a crazy idea of me to ask you, without giving up anybody's identity, one of your, not necessarily favorite, but could be your favorite, a success story that speaks loudly to you for whatever reason that would benefit our audience in hearing.
His name's Andrew. He's currently in the midst of opening up a brick and mortar retail location. It's something he's been doing for a couple months now and getting started. Andrew is just like an amazing, off the charts creative guy, and would sometimes get so overwhelmed. He's been thinking about how to make this work, how to validate it. He just got so overwhelmed with how many ideas were there. And so for him, what the types of things that we did is I just showed him, like, how do we kind of harness these thoughts? How can we actually make minimal viable products of this idea? How can we actually stick with something that feels doable, that doesn't overwhelm us in the moment? How can we continue to build each of those pieces block by block? And in Andrew's case, the way that we went about it is we first validated the idea of, like, I don't want you to write a 50-page business plan. Please don't do that. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to, like, the next farmer's market, and you're pulling out all your stuff, all of the things you think that are going to sell. You're going to pull it out there. Don't care if you have a logo. Don't care if you have anything else. You're going to see what sells, see what works. He validated his idea with a little bit of the encouragement that came from that. He started making some changes. Then his next move was that he actually set up sort of a food truck where he was selling both the plants and the coffee that he's so good at. That started growing and expanding, and people are asking more questions about it. And now that's finally led to him opening up a series of these brick and mortar locations based initially on that food truck, based initially on that little table at the fairs. But it's just a very different way of sort of like going through business, that as opposed to starting off and saying, all right, I have the big grand vision and I will see no results for 6 months. And I'm going to write a 50-page business plan of, like, how can we get into it right away, capturing that energy, capturing that enthusiasm, proving our concepts very fast, and working in a way that allows us to take advantage of all of those ADHD traits like speed and hyperfocus, and being able to lean into those while we have them.
So it seems like he was in a state of chaos, like, is one of the things that we talked about, or I mentioned in the intro. And you helped him get out of the chaos, get to a level of calmness, getting to smaller bite-sized pieces that he could manage and test the waters by going to the market. I like the idea, don't get hung up on the brand. Don't get hung up on a logo. It's amazing how many people think that that's so important. Not saying it's not, but it's important at a different stage. It's not necessarily, why build a brand that looks fantastic, but nobody likes what you're selling or offering, right? You spent all that time, money, and energy doing a brand or creating a system that nobody wanted in the first place. Sure.
And unfortunately, that is one of the places where entrepreneurs with ADHD can be pulled off to the side. Some of that is the sort of neurology of ADHD. If we see so many possibilities, so many things that interest and excite us. Another part of it can be a learned behavior, that if we've had this experience over and over again of getting projects 80% of the way to the finish line, one of the ways as a learned behavior that a brain might start to protect itself is to have us be pulled into things that aren't that important. Because if you don't actually have to put yourself out there, you can never be in a place that people say no to you. So it's about developing our personal skills so that we can get into action, so that we can sort through ideas. And it's combining that with some systems and some sort of proven playbooks, like you say, that get us into action fast. Because one of the things that works really well for entrepreneurs with ADHD is actually getting into momentum. The worst case we can be in is sitting there with a blank piece of paper going, how do I start? That is the place of death for a lot of business owners with ADHD. We try to get out of it as fast as possible.
Yeah. Again, more thoughts are racing through my mind. What a great morning this is for me. Hopefully you're enjoying yourself. I know I am. I don't want to pigeonhole anybody. There's a common phrase that I hear, what I've heard the last 17 years, imposter syndrome. And when you said that people get started, they get 80% of the way there, wherever there is for them, and then they get stuck. They never follow through. They don't jump over the chasm. or if they do, they think they can do it in 2 steps, so you fall into the valley. Brian Tracy calls that the valley of excuses. There is no, you need to go with the whole a leap of faith. Is what you were expressing, and I'm interpreting it from my bias, is that somewhat or part, does imposter syndrome play a role in that? Or is that a label that we should just throw out?
Yeah, I mean, if we use the word imposter syndrome as an example, there's nothing neurological about imposter syndrome. There's no babies born with imposter syndrome and babies born without imposter syndrome. These are all examples of learned behaviors that we might pick up through our experience of life. And it can be true that if somebody has ADHD and they've always had just this sense that there's just this invisible thing that's holding them back, that's not explained. It'd be one thing if you hadn't tried to work on these things, but it's another thing if you've tried over and over and over, and there's still this invisible thing that holds you back because you didn't know it, you didn't have a label for it, you didn't know what was going on, or maybe you had some shame about that label. One thing that can happen is that we pick up these learned behaviors, the imposter syndrome, the perfectionism, right? All ways of protecting ourselves. And it also demonstrates of why when I'm working with folks with ADHD, it's not actually one thing we're working on, right? So sort of misconception that a lot of people with ADHD have is maybe they learn about it later in life and they say, okay, I'm a responsible person. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to this is something to overcome. I know what it is. If I had diabetes, to take diabetes medication. If I have ADHD, I'll take ADHD medication. I'm fine. And what they find is that doesn't actually relieve sort of all of the challenges that might be holding us back. When you take medication, medication is not going to do anything about your imposter syndrome. We actually have to take a pretty holistic approach. We have to work on the neurology issues. We have to work on a lot of those learned behaviors and work on some of those things around mindset. We also have to work on burnout. I would offer that a place that a lot of business owners find themselves in. One of the ways that I can tell fairly easy if I'm working with somebody who's a business owner with ADHD is that the way that they've learned how to get things done is through stress and push and last minute and chaos and just pressure. And that can work to get things done in the moment. But the long-term effects of trying to run your whole business that way, maybe it even works in your 20s, maybe it works in your 30s, and then it comes a point where that stops working and your brain starts to become shot. We got to figure out how to get you through that as well, because we can work on all of the beliefs and learned behaviors in the world, but if we have just taxed our brain and our nervous system so hard through putting stress on ourselves to get us into action, that's not a very sustainable way to build a business. And ultimately, you might be able to start a business that way, but you're not going to be able to scale it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not a medical expert, but stress is a killer. Can be, not to everybody, whether it literally kills you or just kills the drive and energy to follow through and get it done, like you said. It's not sustainable. And I'm going back, one of the first people that talked to me about wasn't ADHD, but talking about the impact of stress was way back in the 80s, decades ago. I don't count years anymore because there are too many, but decades I can remember. It was about 4.5 decades ago, something like that. Anyhow, he did talk about that, our thinking and trying to push things continuously under duress is going to make us ill. It could create things like diabetes. Sure. There's even some talk, and I forget which doctor has talked about this, and I shouldn't mention if I can't quote him, but I'm going to anyway. He even, it's a doctor out of Vancouver. He's got an unusual name. He's an unusually bright guy. But he even believes that with the thought, MS is created by our thoughts. That's how powerful we are. I've also heard stories. I've never researched them, but I trust the people who provided them to me. They say that our optic nerve, I'm going off a bit of a tangent here, but our optic nerve is not regenerative. It won't grow back. Well, there was a story in a study in medical journals that that's not true. It actually came back. And then Dr. Joe Dispenza, another guy in that space, not ADHD related, sorry guys, gals, it's just where I'm going. And he said our now I forgot the quote. Our personality creates our personal reality. Our personality creates our personal reality. So why is that coming up for me? I think because of what I'm picking up from you is ADHD is not just a black and white sort of thing, and you are able to identify the variances of different people and help them down a path or around a path or in a circle or up the stairs, wherever they need to go. Have I got that? Am I on the right path?
Yeah, it appears very differently in different folks. So, for example, let's just take the most sort of stereotypical thing about ADHD. One of the most stereotypical things is impulsiveness, and I would offer that you can think of impulsiveness like a double-edged sword. So, what we actually find is that a lot of people with ADHD, some people come in hyper decisive, very quick, very easy to make decisions, and that serves them well in business. And there's a lot of people in life who have developed a belief that perhaps they are a perfectionist. They're very indecisive. They get stuck in research mode for years.
Mm-hmm.
What's actually going on with them? Both people present sort of with ADHD. Both of them have these traits as a result of ADHD. One, it might be more of the neurology, and the other might be the learned behavior of you're impulsive a few times, you put your hand on the stove a few times without thinking about it, and suddenly you develop a strategy of being very hesitant around things. And then we find ourselves in the worst of both worlds, where we have strong desires inside to make a dent in the world, to chip away at the world, and also a strong desire to avoid taking a risk. But these are all, I think the key thing that I would want people to take away as a responsible person is like, we have to, probably just like anything in life, we have to take responsibility for a situation. And the good news is, like, there's something to overcome. Learned behaviors. If we have a learned behavior, we can unlearn learned behaviors. If there's particular things with our brain, it's something that we can develop those areas of our brain. We can develop our focus. We can develop our impulse control. If it's areas around burnout, we can put strategies in place. They're all things that have to be done. And I'm not saying any of it's easy work, but it is all things that are in our control. And it's really important that we do get it under control, because if we want to change our situation, for many of the people I work with, this is the thing that holds them back. It's not a lack of good ideas. It's not a lack of like the business acumen. It is the kryptonite. But once you work on it, the good news is that we can see changes pretty quickly.
Without giving away all your secrets, I'm going to ask a couple of questions around the process. How do you diagnose somebody's ADHD and they would benefit by having an engagement with you?
Yeah, I mean, just on a medical side, I don't actually provide medical advice, so I don't diagnose in that sense. But what it looks like in that engagement is we start out by actually figuring out what are those specific things that are holding you back. Is it indecision? Is it long-term planning? Is it being able to accurately estimate time? What are all of those things? There's about 50 things we go through to sort of give you an initial benchmark score of what's holding you back. You sort of do scores of 1 out of 10. And what I notice is that if somebody's saying, as an example, that they score a 9 out of 10 on challenges with delegation because they have trouble communicating their big picture vision to somebody who actually has to do the work. But I notice if you got a lot of 9s and 10s in that score, it's going to be something that holds back your revenue. It's going to be a fatal flaw. It's one of those kryptonite things. And then what we start to do is we work systematically on each one of those things as it's individual for a person. So the way that I would work with somebody who has challenges delegating because they have like this visionary mind that can see perfectly the end result, but they're not great at drawing out a map for somebody else, the way I work with that person is very different. And I think even just giving that example, that illustrates why it's so important to actually work with people who've had ADHD, who are one of those types, and who have overcome it. Because a lot of the information out there, a lot of the experts on ADHD do not have ADHD themselves. A lot of the people who put themselves as experts on ADHD primarily have only worked with children. They have not worked with adults. And they don't honestly have a lot of success and examples of helping people through these issues. But what one person can do, another person can do. And if we follow a proven path, we can learn how to do these things.
It sounds like the people you're referencing are more academically savvy versus feet on the street experience of ADHD.
Sure, I would offer it's the same way that if I wanted business advice, I have tremendous respect for research. I have tremendous respect for evidence-based things. But if I wanted somebody to give me business advice, I probably wouldn't hire a business professor to run my business. That's probably not a good plan. And same way, honestly, it's not a great plan if we're looking for high levels of success, particularly for somebody. I wouldn't trust somebody to give me business advice if they've never had a business. I wouldn't trust somebody to give me advice of how to overcome a lot of my ADHD challenges if they've never done it themselves. And that's not necessarily a criticism. I just find it a truth in life of we want to model people who've had similar results that we want to have if we want to have similar results. And I mean, one of the good news is that it can be, there's a tremendous ROI of doing that, because nothing, particularly for smaller businesses, 0 to 5 staff, nothing is going to determine the success of your business more than your own personal effectiveness. It's one of the highest ROI activities that we can be working on.
Yeah. I'm thinking of pianos. And you might be going, why the heck is he thinking of pianos? What you've said, you're just waking up a whole bunch of wonderful memories that I've had along the way of my own journey. So I could hire a piano player, so a teacher who's my neighbor, because it's close and convenient. And they can play 3 or 4 basic songs, and they're really good at it. But I have aspirations to be in the Calgary Philharmonic Symphony, being the keyboard player. I mean, the pianist, pardon me, get it right, with being sought after to play it around the world. Well, to your point, the neighbor probably is not the one that I need to hang out with. I need to be with somebody who's done the travel and been poked and prodded and reprimanded and patted on the back.
Right.
So they could do it for me. That's kind of what I'm hearing, what you're saying, laying down, so to speak.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And this is one of the things that actually really inadvertently leads to a lot of shame among. So if you're wondering, like, how does somebody sort of see themselves, or what might that experience look like? A source of a lot of shame in life has been that people have been trying to follow advice that's not been made for them, and they follow it diligently, and it isn't necessarily working. And it's not because the advice was wrong. It's because the advice was for a problem that the person didn't have. If somebody, if somebody's lazy, if somebody lacks a vision, then, certainly a lot of the personal responsibility type of information can help in sort of overcoming that. If their fundamental problem in life is they're not responsible, it's really helpful to be grounded in that information. But if the reason that you can't act is something like that you have time blindness, you're blind to time, we don't have an awareness of time, then being told, like, just to be more responsible in itself is not going to help you. You actually have to deal with sort of the root issue that's going on behind, and you have to actually work with somebody who knows that there's a root issue, because if you don't know that, that can actually be a place where we end up just being in frustration, because we feel like it'd be one thing if we'd never tried anything. It's a whole other thing if we've tried over and over and failed, because then we start to get the sense of, like, oh my gosh, I guess I have to look internally and just say that I must be a broken person. So I don't know if that relates to any of your visitors. Of course, some of the folks it's going to relate to, and some of the folks it's not. But if you are one of those folks and you've kind of had that experience before, what I might offer is perhaps you haven't been following, perhaps you've been working on a challenge that you don't really have. Perhaps your challenge isn't that you don't have visions, dreams, aspirations. It's not that you're not responsible. It's that nobody showed you things like how to develop time awareness, how to actually sort through, like, a brain that's generating so many ideas that it doesn't neatly fall into an important, not important, or urgent, not urgent type of list. There's a whole different thing going on. It's not that you've never thought about writing down your tasks, only if it was that simple.
You said something in everything you've shared just a few minutes ago, and it's coming back for me. Shame. That surprises me that there's a shame component to this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I can tell you a personal story about that, of how, like, that shows up for me. So for me, before I understood what was going on with ADHD, I was always somebody who could see potential that I had in myself. I had big aspirations. I would tell, for example, my partner, I'd tell my spouse of what I was working on. And at certain times, I would kind of see the look in her eye of when I would tell her these big things I was working on. Because what sort of happened, like at the beginning of a relationship, so excited, oh my God, like, he's a go-getter. And then as time went on, she started kind of developing that sense of, like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. Over and over to the point where I started hiding even. This is not uncommon for entrepreneurs with ADHD. They might start hiding projects they're working on. They're not hiding something big. It's not like they have a secret, they have a secret affair and their shame and they're hiding that. They're literally hiding the things that they're working towards because they're so terrified of what happens if they put themselves out there, they tell people, and despite all of their intentions, they can't follow through. That inability to sort of like, it can be shame because like it can get at our sense of integrity. It's one thing if you have no integrity as a person and you don't do the things you say, that doesn't bother you. It's a whole other thing. If you're a person with integrity, a person who is responsible, and you say you're going to do something and you mean it with every bone in your body, and you write it down and you're diligent, you have a plan, and then just your brain forgets, or you overcommit because you weren't aware of time. And like that can start to wear on people. And and that sort of goes to, the type of person I work with. I can't really help people who are victim. If you got no integrity, if you're victim, all of those other things, I have very little to offer people. It's not that there aren't things that could offer. I'm just not the person. But if you are that type of person who can relate to that, sort of that shame of telling somebody, meaning with every, you're telling your client with every bone in your body that the invoice is going to be there on Friday, and it doesn't come through. That can deeply impact how we see ourselves.
So going back to my pianist, you're looking for those that they're not concert.
I had to think about what you just said there for a second, but okay, continue on.
I hope I said it right. We'll leave it at that. Anyway, going back to the piano playing guy, somebody who's really driven and motivated and has integrity and wants to get to the next level or 2 or 3 way out there is who you're aspiring to help, not the one that just wants to play for family outings, which is not a bad thing, but you're looking for somebody who's striving to do something a little bit more impactful for themselves and play the bigger piano and play to a bigger audience in sense of serving people in a way that makes sense for them, not somebody who's going to just stay on the toy piano and stay there. Would that be a fair, or have I got that wrong?
Well, so the thing, I can tell you what I believe in personally. So for me, what is really important is I don't want just to teach people a bunch of general information about ADHD, a bunch of general information about how your brain works. I want to actually get you through this in a period of 12 weeks. And to get you through that requires some pretty intensive work together, requires intensive work with myself and other people on my team. And for some people, and just that's just the reality of what it takes. Like, we're talking about changing a lifetime of behavior and giving you all of the help and support for you to do that. Now, let's say you have a roofing company and you are amazing at the work you do, but things are falling apart. There's such a clear financial return on doing this work. It's probably the most important thing you could be doing. If you're a lawyer who, if you're a lawyer who has trouble getting your court filings in on time, doing that type of intensive work, such a clear return. If you're a doctor who is burning out and you're a great doctor, but you're burning out and your memory is shot and like you need a way out, then this is a great return. And there's nothing, I don't have anything against somebody who has like an Etsy store. If that's sort of their business, if they're doing, a couple $100s a month, it's just not the type of people that we work with, because I want there to be I want this to be such a clear win, both for people as a person and for their business as a whole. And sometimes I'm not able to get that if the business is just isn't quite off the ground. So there is a very specific person that we do work with, and it's only because we do care deeply about the type of results people get. I don't just want to give you some information. I want to get you through this.
It's about getting results, not about getting revenue. But a side effect from your efforts and your value you bring, you do get revenue and profit, because profit's not a dirty word. It's only dirty if we're focusing on the money and not the people. And I really get a sense that you and your team are people-centric, not dollar-centric.
A lot of us have ADHD ourselves. A lot of us have gone through this, right? So there's something personal of to some extent, and maybe know this as well, like the income only it only motivates you to a certain extent once you have a lot of needs met. And then from that point, I would say, maybe we'll get a little off the ADHD piece, that at the end of the day, that the thing that can always keep you going in business is if you have that strong vision. There's only so much that you might do for profit. But if you have a deep vision, a deep mission, if you care about the work you're doing in the world, like that'll be the thing that can drive you through. That's certainly something that's important for me, because I've been in that spot as well personally, and I just want to give other people that opportunity to not mess around, to not have to spend 5 years figuring this out. What if we could just find a mentor, find a model, do it in the context of our business so that the work that we're doing pays for itself in terms of the ROI. And then we do the work that needs to be done.
What I like about what you said is pretty much everything. It's the 12-week period. I like that. Some people would say it takes 21 days. It might take 21 days for some people, for some things, but more realistically, I think a 12-week path, a plan, process is probably more impactful. It's a 90-day action plan. It's a 90-day flight plan. It's a 12-week year. What do we want to call it? Anyway, I think that framework makes sense. I looked at the clock, and I wished I hadn't, but we have. The one thing I hate about the show, Ezra, it ends. So before it ends, I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you. So let me bring this up. This is, and it's going to be easy to find out where this is because I'll put that up on there. This is your LinkedIn page. Anything you want to brag about here real quick about this? Besides, you can get connected with Ezra here and find out more, start a conversation, and wherever that takes you, it takes you. Anything you want to add to that?
Sure. I mean, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook, online. Try to make sure that there's enough information out there that you can figure out if this is the type of work that you need to do, and if so, I'd be happy to speak with you.
Excellent. And there's one more place to go is right here. And again, to make it easier, it's the URLs there. While I'm clearing my throat, tell us a little bit more about your website there.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just offer that because our work is focused on transformation rather than just giving people information, it's kind of in the same, like I wish there was some sort of magic pill. I wish there was some sort of magic fix. But if somebody says to you like, hey, I got this $7 ebook and it's just going to change your whole marriage, like that isn't true. And that's not actually true about the work we do as well. It's pretty intensive. So we do ask that you learn about the work we're doing, what exactly we're doing, making sure that we're a good fit. And if you're interested in doing the type of work we do, because our very worst case situation is we want to make sure we care deeply to make sure that you're not in a spot where you're going to flame out in a couple of weeks. We want to make sure that there's a clear financial return, that that we're a good fit for what we do, and all of the information on how to do that, and maybe a little bit about what's holding you back. If you've heard little bits of this conversation today and thought, is that me? Does that describe me? Are more explained on our website.
I was going to ask you what's one gem that you could share with the audience, but I think you just did that right then and there. Would you agree, or is there something more that you would like to add before we?
No, I like being accidentally profound. That's totally all right with me. I'm good with that.
It works for me. I think you nailed it on the head. So I appreciate you sharing some time and a little bit of insight as to what you do. And if people don't pick up on your energy, it's not a fit. And if they do, they should probably go to either your website or your LinkedIn, or if they can find you on Instagram and Facebook. I don't have those URLs here, but it's the same guy, the same name. Is that how they would find you? Just orally tell us how would they find you on those platforms?
Yeah, you can just go to Google Ezra DeWolfe, Google ADHD tools. In working with entrepreneurs, the wonderful thing is that I'm working with resourceful people, and I trust in their resourcefulness that
cool.
We can search this on Google.
That gets it covered. So again, thank you for being here, and I'll see you shortly again.
Thanks so much.
Well, I'm glad my technology worked well enough to get me on with my wonderful guest, Ezra. If there was something in there that you heard and you have a question, go check out his stuff. Doesn't he sound like he knows what he's doing? Does to me. As I always like to do at the end of the show is to do this one thing. And I just got to go find it. It's right here. It's the wrong one. Where'd the right one go? It's right here. Somebody moved it. No, they didn't. I moved it. See the U here in wonderful? This represents you and me. We're all unique and we're all wonderful. So continue on your journey of being your wonderful, unique self. Till next time, I'm your host, Coach Phil. I'm signing out until the next time. See you later. If you have questions, shoot them our way.
I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking